Shalom, giving all praise unto Yahbashim, Shabashim, Kodasha, double honors unto the apostles of great millstone. Honestly, brothers, be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. The above our body are coming out here to give you this truth for the grace and mercy of Yahbashim, Shabashim, Kodash. It's going to be a relatively quick video, and this video is going to be based upon this whole ULEZ thing and the ultimate end goal. Because the elite banking families work off of Hegelian dialectics, which is pressure from above, pressure from beneath. And ultimately they present you with two opposing views. And what you've noticed is what a lot of these movements that you see out here throughout the four corners of the earth is always two very, very much opposing views of a particular idea, whether it be the alternative lifestyle individuals, whether it be the C19 thing. All you saw was, or all you see is two very opposing views, and ultimately you're thinking, they're trying to make you pick. They're trying to make you pick off out of one of these particular situations. And the reality of the situation is, when you're dealing with Hegelian dialectics, it's the polythesis, which is basically a fancy word of saying, a fancy way of putting it to where two things come together, right? Polythesis, right? Thesis meaning a thought, basically, and poly meaning multiple thought. So the multiple thoughts that they're trying to have you to accept is usually the end goal. So when you get the pressure from above and pressure from beneath situations, you really got to assess it with a critical eye and think to yourself, what are the elites trying to achieve with this particular goal? And ultimately, in most of these situations that we see, there's usually an agenda, there's usually a goal, there's usually an objective that they've told you about within their movies, or they've taught you about within a plethora of different situations, media, news, with the predictive programming. Okay, so that leads us into this particular thing that we've seen throughout London, which is the ULEZ thing, and they're trialing this particular ULEZ thing in a lot of places here within the UK. Birmingham's got ultra low emission zones. London's got ultra low emission zones. Whatever areas do I know off the top of my head? I think Scotland's got a couple of areas of what's known as ultra low emissions. And basically, when you're dealing with the ultra low emissions thing, you're dealing with people being forced into buying these electric cars. Which, when you're dealing with the electric cars, right, you're dealing with a whole way of driving that's unpractical and is designed to be controlled, right? When you're dealing with a machine that can only do so much miles and then it's useless, then you really have to understand that the elite banking families are setting up a situation out here where your ability to move, for the few people that are going to be left, that is, because remember, that's also part of the agenda. That's why you see a lot of these things, when you think about it at scale, it doesn't make sense at scale. But they're not dealing with the scale, right? The elite banking families are not trying to set up for a large scale situation. So getting back onto the point of the video, when you're dealing with this electric car BS, really, it doesn't work. Okay, it's not a viable solution, right? When I say solution, I say that loosely, because when you really go into the CO2 thing, you come to finding out that a lot of what has been said is sensationalized and is BS. And really the earth is, take a pause there so it doesn't flag up on YouTube, is cooling down. Okay? So with the earth cooling down, right? And we see the situation that they're setting up here, you can really come to the conclusion that it's all set up for a system of control. So a lot of people out here within these big cities are being forced into these impractical cars and into these impractical situations. And ultimately, the counter movement to that, which when you see the so-called freedom fighters, the fake freedom fighters, the social justice warriors out there, when you see them go out there on YouTube and they speak about whatever nonsense and they spew out whatever talking points that they've been taught to speak about, what you notice with the YouTube thing is there's always a counter movement. With any culture, there's always a counter culture. You had the feminism thing, and you had that the counter culture, which was, guys like Andrew Tate and all of that. And they was all set up. Okay, all of these people were set up, right? Because it's the polythesis, which is the agenda. The same thing with this ULEZ thing, right? You had the so-called mayors and the different people that was in charge promoting this particular movement, but ultimately you had the counterculture, which was the people out there that live in London stepping up, so-called stepping up to the plate. And you got to be careful with a lot of these things, because we be passing around articles sometimes, and you're saying, yeah, the people are resisting. Sometimes it's not even the people that's resisting. It's the same heads that have set forth the ULEZ thing into motion. They'll create a little anti-ULEZ movement. This is how Hegelian dialectics work. They'll create an anti-ULEZ movement. The same people that created the ULEZ movement will create an anti-ULEZ movement. This is how crazy the thing is. And what's that in aid of? So when you see these two particular opposing sides, right? Apparently opposing sides come to a head, you're thinking to yourself, oh, we need a solution to this, because the alternative, which is to vandalize, right, is not working, and the proposed solution is not working. So this is where you get the pay per mile thing, right? New pay per mile charge replacing ULEZ. That's going to be all integrated into the system, right? You think about the CHIP, you think about how they want you to move with the CHIP, monitoring them, watching everything that you do. That was always the end goal, pay per mile. And they've been speaking about this pay per mile thing for the longest time, where you have the subscription of cars. They already got that system out there within London, and it's not even profitable, where you could rent a car for a couple of hours and then you give it back. That's the pay per mile. Okay, so this all fits into the narrative of you shall own nothing, you shall be happy, because if you're paying per mile, what's the point of having a car? You might as well rent it. So just a few thoughts that I wanted to share concerning this particular thing. Hopefully it was of edification. With that, I'm going to say, praise unto Yahweh, Shemashim, Kodash, double honors unto the apostles, great millstone. Honest brothers, pushing his truth in sincerity. Shalom.